Hey, my friends, it is Mrs. Real here with another, I should say, our last and final installment of Jed and the Junkyard War. So there was a lot of weird stuff going on last time, and as we ended it, Jed is confronting the Junkyard King, who supposedly looks like his grandfather, or supposedly is his grandfather, but he realizes, and the guy tells him, that he's kind of wearing Jed's grandfather's skin, his meat suit, over his gold dread body. So he really is the Dread King wearing the skin of Jed's grandfather. It was crazy. He also fed Jed a donut. He knew a lot of the stuff about Jed and their favorite things that they used to do. He used to do with his parents. And he fed him a donut that was drugged with something, so he's kind of falling asleep. There was also some conversations about Jed's parents stealing him when he was a baby in a blue car seat, which Jed kind of remembered, the blue car seat part. And maybe they're his parents, maybe they're not his parents. I don't know. So we left it, Jed fell to the floor, and we have like 3 chapters to figure out what is really going on here. So here we go. Chapter 34. Jed, the Dread King's voice rang like tuning forks in Jed's ears. Wake up. Jed opened his eyes. He tried to move, but his hands and feet were strapped to a metal table. I was starting to worry. You've been out for nearly a day. I'm afraid I overdosed the donuts a bit. But it's over now. You're here. You're safe. The room swirled into focus. The white walls looked like a hospital. Joel tugged against his restraints. Let me go! Soon. We need to talk. What have you done with my grandfather, you lying scrap of gutter clunk? The man ground his teeth together. He's not your grandfather. And I do have a name. It's Lyle, not gutter clunk. What did you do with him? Lyle raised his arms. Underneath the torn patch of skin, golden machinery flashed in the light. I'm wearing him. This is all that's left. You killed him! Lyle rolled his eyes. Oh, stop that nonsense. Stop acting like you're going to throw up. You can't, not even if you want to. You killed him. Hush, none of that matters. You've been gone so long, I was afraid you'd forgotten everything. Lyle scratched his forehead. I suppose you have forgotten everything. He touched Jed's arm. Listen to me. The people who claim to be your parents are not your parents. They are weak little bugs that wither and die with a little sip of oil. Pathetic, 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 Lyle shouted. His hands shook. He closed his eyes and drew in a deep breath. But not you. You're pure, crisp, engineered for greatness. Engineered? Of course. He gripped the table with both hands and stared into Jed's eyes. You are the final gilded relic, the greatest of all the gilded relics. The words hung in the air. Relic? What was he talking about? Don't look at me like that. I'm not lying to you. You know it's true. That's a bunch of scrap, Jed said. You'll have to try something better than that. I'm not even a good lie. It's not even a good lie. Pick something I might actually believe. You're right. It's preposterous. Tell me, have you ever broken a bone? Have you ever been sick? Chickenpox? Tonsillitis? No. He leaned even closer. What about the common cold? Jed saw himself flitting through the air, hitting the tugboat deck, sliding fast, so fast, head slamming into something dense. A crack, his neck broken, his body paralyzed. And then he was leaping from the tugboat deck, 40, maybe 50 feet onto a tattered mattress not much thicker than his hand. The impact should have shattered his body. The malaria-infested jungles of Africa, drinking river water in China. Everyone got sick that day. Everyone but me. It's okay, Jed, Lyle said. You're home. Everything will be okay. This isn't my home. No, Lyle shook his head. I hardly recognize it either. Oh, how it's changed. But we'll fix it. We'll fix everything. Rebuild until it becomes what it once was. I have a home, Jed said. You're a liar. Jed focused on the image of his parents. The first time they made a pineapple upside-down cake together. His father started a flower fight, and they threw handfuls of it back and forth until they all looked like ghosts. He even remembered the way the cake tasted when it came out of the oven. They ate on the kitchen floor, surrounded by the flour which covered the kitchen like a winter snowfall. No, I'm not what you say. It's okay. You'll come around. 99R15, Lyle called. Where is the other patient? Metal footsteps limped outside the room, and a gurney rolled through the doors. The dread was unusually tall and had only one eye. It stared at Jed, its head turning from Lyle to Jed, Jed to Lyle. What are you staring at? Go clean the deck or something. Lyle shoved the dread from the room. He wheeled the gurney beside Jed. Shay. Shay, Jed said. Shay, are you all right? Her eyes darted in a dozen different directions, and she pulled against the restraints. She's fine, Lyle said. What are you going to do to her? Relax, I'm going to fix her. I don't want you to fix me, Shay yelled. Yes, you do. You just don't know it yet. Leave her alone, Jed yelled. She needs a bit of oil is all. He took a silver can from a cupboard. What are you doing? Jed said. Don't touch her. Lyle opened the can. Bottoms up. Shay's lip quivered. Jed, help. Jed jerked against his restraints. Don't touch her. Get your hands off of her. Lyle pried open her mouth and stuffed a tennis ball between her teeth. She began to cry. Stop it! Jed tried hopelessly to yank an arm free. Leave her alone! Lyle tipped the can, and a thick stream of oil poured onto the tennis ball and leaked between the edges of her lips. She coughed and choked, but he continued to pour. Tears squeezed from Jed's eyes. Stop it! You're killing her! Lyle rolled his eyes. I'm doing nothing of the sort. Settle down. Jed kicked and strained, but the straps held him in place. When Lyle had emptied the last of the can, he wiped its rim with his finger and licked off the oil. He pulled the tennis ball from Shay's mouth and dropped it into the can. See, he said. Not so bad, was it? Shay's lips and cheeks were black with oil. She sniffled, and her whole body rattled with fear. Lyle dabbed her face with a white rag. Shay, say something. I'm okay. What did you give her? Lyle held the can to Jed's nose. I already told you. Jed sniffed the scent of oil. But she's a gilded relic too. The first, my sweet daughter who sometimes can't remember who she is, how special she is. He stroked her face and combed his fingers through her hair. Shay, is that true? Her eyes flicked back and forth. I don't know, she repeated. She looked as if she was about to start crying again. I was younger at the time, Lyle said, still stroking her hair. Less capable, far less practiced. I blamed myself for your shortcomings, he whispered to her, for the fragility of your memory, the instability of your mind. But we all have our purpose, and she's always fulfilled hers so wonderfully. Jed met his eyes. Her purpose? Lyle nodded. She's had many purposes over the years, but most recently it was to find you and bring you to me. Me? Why me? Lyle stood up straighter. You are my greatest creation, the gilded relic of gilded relics. You and I are destined to be together, to purge the junkyard, to build a new world, a golden world, a gilded world. This is your purpose. Shay's eyes tightened and a tear slipped free, dropping onto the pillow under her head. But she didn't bring me here, Jed said. Oh, but she did. Each captain of a dread vessel has a beacon. Some people say it looks a bit like a spyglass. Jed opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He pictured the red pulsing lens, pulsing, every day before breakfast. Stuck on that stack, it couldn't activate the beacon, but Shay could, and she did, every morning. And then you'd shut it right back off. I didn't do any of that, Shay said, tears streaming down her face. I know, sweetheart, you won't remember. I took those awful memories away. She sobbed as he stroked her hair. You're lying, Jed yelled. No, I'm not a liar. We share that quality of integrity, you and me. Prove it. Lyle pulled a box from his pocket. Inside were tiny circles of glass. He pinched one. Hold still, he said, even though Jed was strapped tightly to the bed. He pried open Jed's eyelids and slid a lens over each eye. Sounds like contact lenses. Jed's vision changed. It was as if he were looking through someone else's eyes. Shay's eyes. Scene after scene flashed in brief fragments like spliced excerpts of corrupted memories. Shay talking to herself, arguing with herself, telling herself Jed was a good mouse and not a Lyle mouse at all. Standing by the smokestack, activating the spyglass, finding it deactivated, reactivating it again and again, waiting for the dread to arrive. Watching Jed get wrapped in a sack, sitting by his bound body on the dreadnought, watching him use the can slicer to escape, leading him through the dreadnought, sneaking away to meet with Spyglass as the others rescued Captain Bog, telling Spyglass and his dread to obey whoever held the fire extinguisher, volunteering to join Jed in storming the galleon, seeing the approval in Lyle's eyes. The images disappeared as soon as Lyle removed the lenses. Don't be upset with her, Lyle said. She genuinely doesn't remember. His voice was soft and sympathetic. I keep the hard memories, the ones that hurt her, right here. He opened the box and slid the lens back into the slot. We all have a purpose. You, me, Shay. It's who we are. Like Shay, you'll come to learn this. You're insane if you think I'm going to help you do anything, Jed said. He wanted to sound strong, but his voice quivered. That won't be your choice to make. Do whatever you want to me. I won't do what you say. You're a liar. You're lying about everything. Perhaps. Then again, perhaps you only need a little convincing. He grabbed his shatterbox, aimed it at Jed's chest, and pulled the trigger. Chapter 35. A white blast slammed into Jed's chest with a crushing force. He couldn't breathe. This is for the best, Lyle said. It's the only way you'll understand, and you must understand. The shot blasted a wide hole in his clothes. As the smoke cleared, bits of metal glittered underneath. Instead of broken bones and torn muscle, there were gears and coils, as golden as the sun. Captain Bog's voice rang in his ears. Looks like we got ourselves a little golden boy, eh, Kit? Jed's heart thumped. He could feel the blood beat under his skin. Dizziness swirled in his stomach. No, I can feel. Of course you can feel, Lyle said. You feel deeper than any of those meat sacks could ever hope to. I have a heart. A wonderful golden heart, stronger than every bit of iron or copper this world has ever unearthed. I'm bleeding. Lyle swiped a finger in the red liquid and rubbed it against his thumb. Oil. No, Jed shook his head. This is impossible. What have you done to me? You have a destiny, my boy, and it's all in here. Lyle pressed his palm against the golden machinery in Jed's chest. Lyle whipped a handkerchief from his pocket and rubbed a patch of oil until the gold underneath shone. Here, he tapped the center of Jed's chest. This will fix you. Fix everything. Lyle's finger traced a small shape. A keyhole. What is that for? It unlocks your potential. Unlocks everything you are capable of. There's so much more inside of you than you could ever imagine. Potential like the world has never seen. He scrunched his lips together. Each gem of possibility, each bottled talent, each treasure box of power comes with a key. A key to control the dread, as Shay does. A key to make you strong. A key to make you clever. Even a key to make you fly. He reached into his coat and removed a ring of keys. He flicked through them one at a time. So many keys, all for you. He dropped the ring to the floor. But none of them matter, because the maggots who stole you from me stole the only key of significance, the only key I care about, a key I can't reforge. I don't suppose you've seen such a key? He waited, but Jed only glared. He shrugged. Then I'll have to take you apart, piece by piece, wipe every memory, start from the beginning. That's not what I wanted for you, for us. I wanted us to share your memories, not lose them. Share? Lyle touched Jed's shoulder. Of course. Don't you understand? You're me. You're my perfected framework. A shell waiting for me to occupy. This skeleton, he touched the golden innards of his own arm, was only ever meant to be a temporary home. It reeks of adequacy. It yearns for the untapped potential of all those locked treasure boxes inside you. He tapped the keyhole in Jed's chest. The time has come. Our time has come. Take this moment to think, to remember, and I'll be back before you can blink. We've got a lot of work to do, he said with a smile. An entire world to destroy, an entire world to build anew. He turned and left the room. The door clapped shut. Jed stared at the keyhole in his chest. It's not possible. He tugged against the leather straps around his wrist. He needed to touch it, to touch the golden metal spinning and whirring inside his chest. His stomach felt like glue. It's not true, he said aloud. A soft whimper echoed from Shay. Shay, it's not true. None of this is real. Her jaw shook and she winced at his words. Tell me what's going on. Jed's voice bounced through the room. It rang in his ears. Felt tinny, fake, metal. Answer me. Look at me. Why won't you open your eyes? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, she said. I didn't know. I did know, but I didn't know. Please don't be mad. I'm sorry. The small voice stabbed Jed with more persuasion than the sight of gears inside his body. Am I? He looked again at the golden metal, spinning, humming so softly it sounded more like a fox's purr than the drone of machine cogs. Eyes still shut and leaking tears, Shay nodded against the restraints. But I grew up. I grew older. I'm not a machine. I have a family. I have a mom and dad. The doorknob rattled. Shay's eyes flicked open, and Jed's gaze snapped to the door. The handle turned, and the hinges creaked. A spindly dread peeked inside and scanned the room. It was the unusually tall dread from earlier, the one who'd stared at him. It stood there, still staring. Then it removed the hubcap strapped to its chest. It unlaced the pipe tied to its leg, dropped the crowbar from its arm, and loosened the strap around its head, uncovering a second eye. Jed's blood felt like ice under his skin. The soft hum of his mechanical chest became a wild whirring, for the man standing in the doorway wasn't a dread at all. It was his father. Curiouser and curiouser. Dad? Jed's voice quivered. His throat felt small. Tears burst from his father's eyes. Jed! Jed's breath caught, and tears of his own soaked into his eyes. His father's arms wrapped around him. The same arms that had carried Jed up his first mountain. The same arms that had guided Mom through 1,000 living room waltzes. And the same arms that had cradled them both after that fat air conditioning repairman had stepped on Frank, the family turtle. As his father's fingers laced through Jed's hair and pulled his forehead to his own, Jed thought of Frank, of his fractured shell, the stubby limbs, and wrinkled neck, limp. He remembered the moment when he lifted the still turtle into his arms. He'd been sure that nothing would ever make him feel better again, but his father's arms had somehow sucked away the pain. They had done it then, and they did it now. What's happening to me? His father pulled away and examined the burned hole and golden machinery. You'll be okay. We'll get out of here together. That man, Lyle, he's not your grandfather. But the picture, he looks like... He's not. He's just a monster who killed your grandfather. He found out you were coming and tried to trick you. We tried to find you before he did. I came to the Red Galleon to stop him, but it was too late. You were already here. Jed nodded. But he told me. His next words felt like shame and thick sludge. That he made me. His father squeezed Jed's shoulders. The corners of his eyes wilted like mom's porch roses in autumn. I'm so sorry. We tried so hard to stop him. He released Jed and unbuckled the strap around Jed's wrists and ankles. We need to get out of here. Jed sat up and pain jolted through his chest. His father grabbed a can of oil. Hold still, he said, easing Jed back down. He opened the can and poured. Red oil streamed into the shimmering gears. Relief rushed over Jed. His father returned with gauze and wrapped it around Jed's torso. What am I, Dad? Jed said, his voice shaking. His father took Jed's head in both hands. You're my son. The words felt right, sounded right, but they weren't true. Not exactly. He said you stole me from him. We took you to protect you. Once we found out what Lyle was going to do with you, we couldn't let that happen. And we weren't about to let coppers or irons use you like gutter clunk. So we took you away from everything, away from the war, away from the killing and the greed. We didn't know what was on the other side of the fringe, but it was worth the chance. His father paused, letting Jake take in the truth. We always have a choice, he continued. You have a choice right now. You don't have to come with me. You can stay right here and wait for Lyle. His eyes flickered to the keyhole in Jed's chest. You can choose to let him turn you into something else. It's still your choice. Is that what you want? There's nothing holding you to that table anymore. I want to go home. Jay's father held out a hand. Then let's go. Jed looked at Shay, and another word from Spaghetti surfaced in his mind. Empathy. We need to help her too, Jed said. Okay, there's a life raft on the side of the boat. We need to hurry. They helped Shay from the table, and she and Jed followed his father out the door. The three sprinted down the corridor to a cherry-stained staircase that led to the top deck. His father held a finger to his lips and pointed to a dread shuffling along the deck. Jed peeked out from the staircase opening. A second dread just stood, staring at the wall, and a third walked back and forth, its head twitching erratically. The raft is a short sprint over there, his father pointed across the deck. As the shuffling dread turned around, his father held up 3 fingers and lowered them one at a time. Run! They bolted into the open. Jed's father leaped behind a crate, crouched, and then sprinted again. Jed raced to keep pace. They ducked behind the mast, then hid behind a shatter keg. Bit by bit, they inched to the far side of the ship. And then Jed froze at a black trench coat rocking slightly with the breeze. He cupped his hands to his mouth and called in a whisper, Sprocket! The woman didn't turn around. Sprocket! Jed called louder. Jed, no! His father grabbed his arm. And then she turned. Rusted gears rotated slowly in empty patches of her hollow cheeks. Her face, half gone, held only a ghost of the woman she once was. One eye was missing, the other empty, cold, foreign. Metal hoses connected her head to her shoulders. No! A chill shot through Jed's arms. No! He stumbled, but his father held him steady. Sprocket limped toward them. Step, clack, step, clack. The amputated barrel of her shadow lance was anchored to her knee instead of a leg. Stowaways, she said. The silver hoses made her voice sound thin and metallic. Stowaways on the galleon, she said louder, but the voice cut short inside the freshly attached hoses. Jed, come on. His father tugged on his elbow. Sprocket! Sound the alarm, Sprocket called, her voice like sheets of metal being sliced. Jed ran, and the step clack behind him quickly faded. Blood pounded in Jed's ears. His jaw was tight and his muscles wobbled. It's my fault. She wouldn't be here if I hadn't insisted on looking for my grandfather. Here, his dad said. the edge of the ship. Shay climbed up the galleon's railing and hopped to a copper raft with 4 seats. Thick iron chains anchored it to the galleon. Get started on these. His father handed Jed a key and pointed to padlocks on the chains. I'll get the engine fired up. He hopped inside and cranked a lever. Propeller blades twice the length of the raft spun underneath it as if it were an upside-down helicopter. The raft lifted, but the chains held it in place. Jed removed the first padlock and tossed it to the deck with a thunk. Hurry, his father called. Jed unlocked the other 2, then hopped in. Stowaways! A metallic voice rang from behind. Footsteps clumped along the deck. Lyle. Lyle appeared and their eyes met. The man's chin lifted and his head shook ever so slightly. Get off that raft! Jed's father pulled a lever and a hydraulic noise hissed from the engine. Hold on, he said, then jammed 2 levers forward. The raft accelerated but jerked to a halt as chains rattled beneath them. Underneath the nest of links was another padlock. Jed ran to the edge of the raft and leaped to the galleon. His body slammed into its side and he wrapped his arms around a rail. Jed, what are you doing? Stop! You're going to get yourself killed! Everyone yelled at him. Shay, his father, Lyle. He pulled himself up and flopped onto the deck, then jammed the key into the last padlock. A white blast soared past him and slammed into the raft. Jed pulled off the lock and threw it to the deck. Get on, his father yelled. Jed stood, but before he could jump, Lyle spoke. Take 1 step, and I'll blast that meat sack between his pretty white eyes. Jed met his father's gaze and mouthed the word, go. The blood drained from his father's face, and his head shook back and forth. Jed raised his arms and faced Lyle. I'll stay here with you. Just let them go. Lyle looked from Jed to his father, then to Shay. Hatred burned in his eyes. Shay, he yelled to her. Shay, come back to me. If you don't let them go, Jed said, then I'll jump. He backed toward the railing until he felt it press against his hip. Lyle's fingers spread wide and he lifted the shatterbox in the air. Stop! Get away from the edge! Only when they're gone. Lyle stepped closer. You won't jump. Jed swung 1 leg over the railing and then another. Lyle froze. Okay, you win. Come back over the railing and they're free to go. He waved his hand in gentle beckoning motions. But if you don't, that meat sack is dead. Lyle steadied his shatterbox. Jed, his father called, get in now. Jed shook his head. He'll kill you. I don't care. You can't let him take you. I'm sorry. Shay's eyes filled with tears. Jed, no. Come away from the edge, Lyle said softly. Not until they're gone. The raft drifted away slowly until it was a pinprick in the dark mist of the barge. All right, they're gone. Now come here. Jed stepped over the railing toward Lyle. The man rushed forward and swept Jed into a hug. He stroked Jed's hair and squeezed. Jed returned the embrace, hugging Lyle tightly. Then he reached down and pulled the shatterbox from Lyle's belt. He wriggled free and pointed the weapon at Lyle. Disappointment stung Lyle's face. This isn't you. Don't you understand who I am? You and I, we're the same. Jed held the shatterbox in both hands to steady his shaking arm. What are you going to do? Shoot me and holler for your meat sack kidnapper to come back? Can't you see? He doesn't care about you. He left without a word, flew off with my Shay and left you. I would never do that, never. He shouted that last word, and the muscles in his neck quivered. Give me that. I will take care of you. I won't abandon you. I'm not like him. Jed's arms stayed steady. 79Q4B, fetch me that shatterbox, but don't hurt the boy. Sprocket stepped forward, and Jed's heart thumped. Sprocket, it's me. It's Jed. Don't. Step, clack, step, clack. Single eye empty. Dead. Step, clack, step, clack. Jed twitched and trained the shatterbox on Sprocket. Stop! Or what? Lyle said. You'll kill your friend? That's not a very friendly thing to do. Jed's lungs rose and fell. Sprocket, it's me. It's Jed, the one who can't climb a ladder, remember? Step, clack, step, clack. Jed's hands felt slick. He held his breath, then swung the shatterbox toward Lyle and fired. The blast hit squarely, and Lyle crumpled to the deck. Sprocket stopped and turned around. Jed remembered how Sprocket would leave her signature in the smoke's trail after a shot, but this wasn't Sprocket. It wasn't anything. We all have a purpose. Lyle curled up to his knees and stood. The blast had washed away half of Jed's grandfather's face, revealing a golden mask. We're all engineered for something. I am the guardian of this world. Guardians are made to endure. I never fall forever. I don't weaken. I don't rust. I don't age, and I won't die. Jed fired again and again. The shots knocked Lyle from side to side, but he always stood straight again. What I do next is for you, he said. Sometimes we must hurt to be healed. Sometimes we must lose a choice to see the right choice. You think you have a home, a family, friends. I am your family and your only friend. Sprocket grabbed Jed and dragged him forward. Sprocket, don't do this. Jed struggled against her grip. Lyle frowned at Jed. You could have shot her. She's not even a meat sack anymore, just a pile of scrap. Why do you care? You wouldn't know, Jed said, studying Sprocket for any hints of life. I suppose not, which means she'll have to go. 79Q4B, walk yourself over the edge. She gave Lyle a confused look. But don't worry, Lyle said. I'll have you rebuilt by morning, and I'll make you twice as tall. He tilted his head and whispered to Jed. That's not true at all, of course. I'm not even going to look for her. Sprocket grinned at Lyle's proposal and hobbled toward the edge. Step, clack, step, clack. No, Jed yelled. He's lying. Lyle hooked his arm around Jed. You need this. You need to cleanse yourself. Jed stepped after Sprocket, but Lyle held him firm. His grip was impossibly strong. Sprocket, no! Step, clack, step, clack. And then Sprocket lifted herself over the railing and fell into darkness. Jed felt torn in half. No! He jerked against Lyle's hold, swinging his fist. You killed her! Lyle caught Jed's hands and held them firm. In time you will thank me. I promise. I swear it on my eternal life. From small pain comes great opportunity. I'm going to kill you, Jed muttered. I'm going to find a way to do it. Come. Lyle led Jed by the arm. I must show you something else. They entered the ship's bridge. Levers and buttons lined the wall, but in the center of the room was an actual wheel with spokes and a carving of an anchor in its wood. Lyle scanned the skies, then pointed in the distance at the tiny life raft slowly drifting through the air. There. Lyle gripped the wheel and spun. The galleon tilted. Take us closer, 821E, Lyle said. A dread shuffled forward and pulled a lever. The galleon accelerated and began gaining on the life raft. Jed's vision wobbled, and he felt his mouth open. No, you can't. You said you'd let them go. I did let them go. Ready an acid cloudburst, 821E. But Shay, Jed said desperately, she's your daughter. She's on there too. Lyle placed a hand on Jed's shoulder. It warms my soul how much you care for your sister. You see, 821E will launch 3 shells over the raft. The acid will melt away everything that's not metal. So if that thing really is your father, he's made of metal just like you. Don't. Please, I'll do anything for you. Lyle gave Jed a look of pity. We both know that's not true. The second you thought they were safe, you tried to kill me. That's not something I can overlook. I'm trying to teach you. I'm doing this for you. All for you. He motioned to the dread. A single barrage will be sufficient. Launch a 3-shell spread 30 degrees off the port bow. On my mark. Out of the corner of his eye, Jed noticed that one of the buttons near the controls was glowing red. Fire! He bounded forward and slapped the button. A series of shatter kegs all fired at once. Red particles of dust exploded forward, streaking past the life raft. The shots slammed into the propellers of the nearest dreadnought. Anger coursed through Lyle's eyes. "What have you done?" Chunks crumbled from the hull of the dreadnought, and then something exploded and the stern began to dip. "You shot one of our dreadnoughts out of the sky!" More explosions boomed, and the dreadnought began to descend more quickly. With a sinking feeling, Jed suddenly realized which dreadnought this was. His heart clenched in his chest. Captain Bogg. What have I done? The massive ship speared into the barge's surface. A ball of orange fire swept over its hull. Lyle's face shook with a rage as flames consumed the ship. "You have to go," a voice said in Jed's head. "Go now!" Jed turned and ran. Lyle shouted through the air, "Stop him! There has to be another raft. Find it!" Jed ran to the perimeter of the galleon until he spotted one. Dread clattered all around him. Before he could reach the raft, 3 dread barricaded the way. Jed grabbed the handle of a shatter keg and spun it around. He fired, and the blast blew a crater into the deck. Metal showered over the debris. As Jed skirted around the new crater, a wooden plank creaked and buckled under his feet. The floor beneath him fell away, and he tumbled onto the deck below. The shatter keg he'd just used rolled after him and crashed through the planks near his feet, opening yet another hole to the lowest deck. He squeezed through the hole and dropped into a long corridor. "Jed, stop this," Lyle called from above. Jed scrambled to his feet. The shatter keg had fallen on its side next to him. It was nearly as tall as him and probably weighed twice as much. He gripped the copper tubing on its barrel and heaved. The shatter keg lifted a few inches but dropped again. "Lift. You can do this." Jed looked at his hands, imagined the metal gears spinning under his skin. He squatted and took a breath, then grabbed the tubing again. The muscles in his back, or whatever they were, tightened. "Lift!" Jed yelled to himself. Inch by inch, the shatter keg lifted until it flipped upright. Lyle's voice taunted him in his head. "I don't die." "We'll see about that." Jed dragged the shatter keg down the corridor. A crunch sounded from the debris behind him. Jed turned around. Lyle shook wood chips from his coat sleeve. "Put that thing away and stop acting like a child." Jed lined up the shatter keg and fired. An explosion cracked from its end. The shot clipped Lyle's shoulder. His body spun through the air and smashed through a wall. As the black smoke settled, Lyle climbed to his feet and brushed off his clothes. "This is completely unnecessary." The blast had torn away the last of Jed's grandfather, leaving only a gleaming machine. Jed fired again, knocking Lyle to the floor. Again he stood. Jed wheeled the shatter keg backward and opened the heavy oak door to the garden. He hauled the shatter keg inside and took position behind the lemon tree. "There's nowhere to go," Lyle called. Jed fired again. "I can do this all day," Lyle said, rising from the floor. "So can I." Jed blasted Lyle through the wall of his kitchen. Frosting still smeared the wood floor. "Actually, you can't. I'd bet you don't have more than 2 shots left. I suggest you make them count." Jed looked at the shatter keg. He then tilted the barrel and aimed at a patch of soil not more than 3 feet in front of his toes. The gears in Lyle's face slowed and nearly froze. "Stop! Jed, what are you doing?" Jed yanked a lever. The shatter keg fired, ripping through the ship's hull. Soil drained from the room like sand in an hourglass. "No!" Lyle bolted forward and scooped armfuls of soil into the corridor. Jed held his breath as he lined up the next shot. He yanked the firing lever, and the shatter keg blasted the deck below Lyle's feet. Lyle looked up with sorrow in his golden eyes, and then the floor around him fell away. Lyle slipped through the hole without a sound, without a shriek or a scream or even a gasp. He tumbled through air toward the barge until he was too distant to see. Jed sighed and leaned against the lemon tree. At least for now, it was over. He was safe. His father was safe. But as he pressed his shoulder into the tree, it began to lean with him. The deck splintered and cracked with its weight. He clung to the tree as it began to sink. Something snapped, and the tree fell onto its side. The deck collapsed under him. Jed grabbed a tree limb. His feet dangled in open air as planks of wood fluttered to the barge. Another plank of flooring snapped, and the tree fell into the sky with Jed still holding its trunk. Wow. I'm not sure I understood anything that's happening there. Let's see how this finishes. Jed held tight to the trunk of the lemon tree, and together they crashed. Branches tangled around his face. A hand reached through the leaves and gripped him. A familiar hand. His father's hand. Jed clawed through the lemon tree's branches, swatting at clumps of soil that shouted around him. You came back, Jed said. His father shrugged. I was in the neighborhood. Jed scrambled free and wrapped his arms around his father. He said you didn't care about me, that you'd abandoned me. Shay jammed the accelerator. The raft shot forward, shaking more soil into Jed's hair. Where to? She asked no one in particular. Jed's father stared deeper into the fog. Lawnmower Mountain. Shay lifted an eyebrow. What's Lawnmower Mountain? Jed asked. A hidden city that not many people still know exists. Why are we going there? His father squeezed Jed's shoulder with one hand. To find your mother. She was supposed to pick you up from the steamboat, but something happened. We planned to use relics to keep in touch, but shortly after we separated, they stopped working. I haven't heard from her since. She's missing? Jed knew that his father had just said as much, but the words came out anyway. How do you know she's at Lawnmower Mountain? If she's out of reach, it's the only place she would have gone. What about the relic? Can't you fix it? Mine isn't the one that's broken. Isn't there something else you could use? Some other relic? His father shifted and avoided Jed's eye. He nodded and scratched the side of his neck. There is one. And it can find Mom? He nodded slowly. Then we'll get it. We'll do whatever it takes. Where do we start looking? We don't have to look anywhere. It's already here. He glanced at the bandages around Jed's chest. A lurching feeling turned Jed's stomach on end. For a moment, the briefest of seconds, he'd forgotten what he was, forgotten about the spinning gears under his skin. I can find Mom? You can do more than you know. You found Lyle. You found me. How? You read the note we left. All of it? Jed nodded. Then you brought the key. Jed wiggled his toes against the metal lump. He pulled off his shoe, and the key clattered to the floor. Is this what Lyle was looking for? His father picked it up and nodded. What does it do? He set it in Jed's palm and closed his fingers around it. Unlocks potential. Jed stared at the key. What do you mean? His father removed the bandages around Jed's chest and traced the golden keyhole. Lyle made you with the potential to do almost anything. Anything, but not everything. It's up to you to choose who you want to be, how you want to grow, what you want to do. This key, he patted Jed's hand, unlocks your first choice. You are not gears and gold. You are a boy with his own choice, his own life. The moment you turn that key, your world will never be the same. You will never be the same, and there's no going back. Jed's mind yelled at himself to think about consequences, to ask his father more, to find out what the key would do to him, but all he could think about was home. If this was the key to that, to home, then nothing else mattered. A word floated into his memory. Spaghetti. It was time for a little insanity. Jed lifted the dented shaft of metal to his chest and slid it into the golden keyhole. He turned, and a click echoed in his ears. And that, my friends, is the end of the first book. Interesting to think, or to hear what you guys think. Pretty sure book number 2 is going to be Finding Mom. Now they have Shay with them. Now he knows he's not a normal boy, although we kind of knew he wasn't normal from the beginning. We just didn't know how not normal. I don't know, got lots of thoughts going through my brain. Apparently somebody else does too because they're calling me. Is this going to work out? Going back home? Can you ever go back home now that you know that there's this whole other world and all these other things are different? Did they find his mom? Did something happen to her? Now he's got his sister Shay with him. How's that going to be changing? Okay, lots of things to think about. The good news is book 2 is in our library. If we can get to it at some point. It's there. Potentially at the public library. Stephen Bowles is the author's last name. Jet and the Junkyard War is the first one. I'm having trouble remembering what the second one was off the top of my head, and I'm not seeing it in here. So we'll have to find out. So can't wait to have discussions with you guys again in person. Whenever that's going to happen, we'll see. And I can't wait to talk about this with those of you who read through it or listened through the whole thing with me. And we will talk to you again soon. Bye, friends.